Chair Van Brocklin, we are now live.
Okay, thank you. So we're going to hold off for just a second and opening the meeting. We're waiting for a couple of people. So everyone just hang on a second.
Chair, Commissioner Simpson just joined us.
Okay. Anything from Commissioner Burke?
We've not heard from her yet this morning.
Okay. Well, we got another minute and then we'll get started. Give her another minute or so to join. Andy, I don't see your associate there.
I finally went back to school.
Is there going to be a cameo appearance?
No,
No?
I'm in the office today and she is feeling better and is back at school.
Okay, good. All is returned to normal in the world, your world.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah. Okay, well, I think we'll get started and hope that Burke is able to join us here momentarily. So I want to welcome everyone to the April 29th, 2022 special meeting of the Oregon Transportation Commission. This meeting is really focused on one item, a presentation by the Urban Mobility Office on the I-205 project. And we've all been briefed on the issues, well, specifically the funding issue before us. And so this is both a discussion, a presentation, discussion, and an action item for the commission today. So I want to start by thanking everyone who's been involved in this for the entire duration of the project, but in particular the last few months as we have moved it. And by we, I mean primarily ODOT and Urban Mobility Office move this forward to where we are today. I know there's been a tremendous amount of work that's been done on this. So I appreciate all of those efforts, as I'm sure do all of the members of the commission, and appreciate really the extra effort that's gone on in the course of the last, in particular, couple of months. So with that, I think we will get to that item in a minute, but first we will have public comment. And I have on my list three people who have signed up to testify. Washington County Commissioner Pam Treese, Metro Councillor Shirley Craddick, and Janet Jarvis from the Oregon Trucking Association. So I think we will take them in that order and start with Commissioner Treese. Welcome, Pam. Good to see you. So the floor is yours for a couple of minutes, and we look forward to hearing your comments.
Great. Thank you very much. Good morning, Chair Van Brocklin and commissioners and those who are attending. First of all, I want to thank you and your staff for including me in this opportunity to testify. My name is Pam Treese, and I'm Washington County Commissioner for District 2. I'm here today to express support to amend the 2021-2024 statewide transportation improvement program to increase construction funding for the I-205, I-5 to OR 213 Phase 1 of the 205 improvement project. My board has long supported improvements on the major bottlenecks in this 3-county metro region that the state legislature directed for improvement in HB 2017. The I-205 improvement project addresses a need for safe and reliable travel for trips to and from Washington County, the region, and the state. Nobody wants to see the cost increases that we're all seeing on capital projects these days, but it's a fact, and the increased project cost needs to be addressed. Our board supports the I-205 project and understands that tolling is part of the revenue needed for the Abernathy Bridge and the road widening project. Thank you for your work on this, and thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. We appreciate your being here this morning. We'll move now to Metro Councillor Shirley Craddick. Shirley, good morning. Shirley, you're on mute.
I think I learned to take that off by now. Thank you. Thank you for allowing me to be here. Really appreciate it. So good morning, Chair Van Brocklen and commissioners, and Mr. Strickler and Mandy, Brendan and Della. Thank you for your diligence over these last few months and working with Metro Council and the Joint Policy Advisory Committee on Transportation. So for the record, my name is Shirley Craddick. I sit on the Metro Council. I represent the east part of the Metro region, and I'm also the chair of the Joint Policy Advisory Committee on Transportation, which is JPAC. I'm here also today to testify on the I-205 STIP Amendment and Tolling Program. And I'm also here to support the Transportation Commission's advancing the work toward a critical piece of transportation infrastructure for the Portland Metro region. And that's the Abernathy Bridge that crosses the Willamette River at Oregon City. As you know, over the past several months, Metro has worked diligently with and through our regional committees, that's JPAC, TPAC, MPAC, to respond to the request of ODOT to amend both the 2018 Regional Transportation Plan and the MTIP to allow the I-205 tolling project to move forward with preliminary engineering. The Metro Council just approved these amendments this last Tuesday. This took some time, as you know. A lot of meetings have occurred in the last few months. Because the leaders in our region understand that when you're implementing tolling in the state for the first time, this isn't just about one project. This is about transportation funding in our region. This is about demand management. This is about addressing inequitable impacts and fighting climate change in our communities. And answering that question, how will this all come together? We appreciate the work done at our regional committees, and we understand the regional implications and appreciate all the recommendations that they have made. ODOT staff, and local elected leaders did an incredible amount of work to craft a workable agreement, and we appreciate your support with the changes to the RTP amendments and the letter of agreement between ODOT and the Metro Council. So while I'm here today to offer my support of the STIP amendment, I'm also here to put on the record what I believe to be some of our shared values. Tolling in our region must include demand management and diversion mitigation, and we must actively pursue options for innovations in these areas. The I-205 project must be designed to fit with the regional mobility pricing project. We must center equity in our processes and outcomes and implement equitable income-based toll strategies. Tolling revenue must be used to fund projects to help manage local diversion. This isn't just about building a highway. There must be strong local input on how this tolling revenue is invested. I'm also here, though, to speak to the anxiety and the concern you have heard coming from our region about the I-205 tolling moving ahead, independent of the regional mobility pricing program. And before we know the details of the RMPP. The work over the past several months has been critical to mitigating some of these concerns. And while we understand that you will not commit to these programs being implemented concurrently, the region needs you to make the time between turning on the tolls and on I-205 and the implementation of the regional mobility pricing project as short as possible. So thank you for your time and your consideration. And thank you to Director Strickler and the staff in the Office of Urban Mobility for your hard work and your partnership. I really appreciate it and look forward to working with you in the future to work all this out. So thank you for this opportunity to give testimony today.
Thank you, Councillor Craddick. We're certainly all cognizant of the complexity and the range of issues and things that we need to, in partnership with you and others, be thinking about. And so we appreciate the effort to have constructive and useful dialogue over the last few months and get to a hopefully a firmer understanding of approach. The issues you've raised on climate equity, demand management, et cetera, are all things we talk about regularly. And we also obviously all recognize that this is brand new to the region. It's brand new to the entire state. And all who use this system, the interstate system, and other large highways in Portland Metro. So appreciate that. Comments by you and by Commissioner Treese. It's important for us to be hearing both informally and also occasionally on the record in our meetings. So thank you. I also want to welcome Commissioner Burke to the meeting. Welcome. And with that, I will turn to Jana Jarvis from the Oregon Trucking Association.
Good morning, Chair Van Brocklin. Commissioners, I'm Jana Jarvis, President and CEO of the Oregon Trucking Association. I'm speaking to you today from the Salem Convention Center, where we are having our annual safety conference. So there's a little background noise, a little traffic out the window, and hopefully I will be uninterrupted for the next couple of minutes. So just keep that in mind as I move forward here. What you're considering today with I-205 is a project that is of significance for the Oregon Trucking Association. In House Bill 2017, we took a 53% tax increase, a pretty substantial tax increase, almost double what passenger vehicles took, because of a couple of projects that were listed in that bill that were of extreme importance to the freight industry. And the I-205 is certainly one of them. Those identified projects, both the Rose Quarter and I-205 specifically, are huge for freight movement throughout the state of Oregon. So they do not just impact the metro region or the Portland citizens, they impact the economic values that are transported across this state every single day. I-205 is a major freight corridor, and it is listed on the top 100 bottlenecks by the American Transportation Research Institute. And it needs and has needed to be fixed for some time. Our only request as you consider this project moving forward is that you think about the timing of construction so that we don't have every major thoroughfare with additional bottlenecks over the next few years. So that's one of the cautions I'm always relaying to ODOT. In terms of the tolling discussion, I think that's one that we will be one to be actively engaged in. As I tell you, it's already significantly more expensive to have a trucking operation in Oregon or to do business in Oregon than any other state in the region. In fact, we have the #1 tax burden on the trucking industry in the entire nation, and we are about 24% higher than the #2 state, which is California. So additional costs through tolling needs to be carefully considered for the freight industry. But OTA does support this project. We are anxious to work with you, and we're anxious for you to turn some dirt over and get this project moving forward. So with that, I thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Jana. And also we'll be obviously in the water this summer, beginning this summer and for the next 4 summers. So we'll be turning some submerged dirt as well. So with that, Sabrina, are there others who you're aware of who would like to comment?
No, Chair, that's all we have today.
Okay, thank you very much. So that concludes our public comment segment for this meeting. And I'll now turn to the Urban Mobility Office to provide a report. So Brendan, Della, and Mandy, I think Travis is also lurking about here in case we need him to get involved in this, and of course, Chris. So with that, I guess I will turn it over to Brendan.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning.
Good morning.
Members of the commission. For the record, I'm Brendan Finn, Director of ODOT's Urban Mobility Office. And before I begin, just very quickly, want to recognize our director, Director Strickler. He runs a very big agency, statewide agency, and I just want to recognize his work to get us to the point where we are today, playing an active role in this, and actually want to give the director an opportunity if he had any words to say. I thought you just went off camera, so I'll get him back on. Director, thank you for your contributions. Just wanted to put that on the record and see if you had any comments before we get right into the details and the meat of this item.
Mr. Finn, too kind as always. For the record, Chris Strickler, Director. Chair, Commission, just very briefly, there's a lot of activity clearly in moving any project like this. And I think you saw from the commenters this morning that the partnership takes ongoing conversation, and these things are more complex than they should be. And I hate to use the word complex because quite honestly, it's our job to get them done. And so we need to continue to move forward on the commitments that we've made. I'll just say that for this project, this fits very nicely into the urban mobility strategy. It is one of the 5 key themes of the urban mobility strategy that the Urban Mobility Office, as well as Region 1, is continuing to move in parallel. So this is a key project for us. And quite frankly, what we're seeing in the industry is a pretty significant level of volatility in pricing and other things, which is what you're going to hear about today. And so it's important that we continue to have that dialogue and recognize the urgency of getting these projects out to construction that we committed to the public and that the legislature committed us to the public.
Great, thank you, Director. Appreciate your leadership. Okay, Sabrina, we can bring up our presentation and we'll get right into it. Again, we're here this morning for your Urban Mobility Office update. We're usually here during your regularly scheduled meetings. We'll talk a little bit of why we wanted to have this special meeting this morning. Appreciate the commission convening for this as we move forward a real critical piece of the urban mobility strategy. I'm joined today by Deputy Director Della Mosier of the Urban Mobility Office, our Strategic Initiatives Director Mandy Putney, and our guest today, our partner at Hewitt Construction, Mr. Kent Bowden. Next slide, please. So just to provide a little bit of orientation for those watching and members here, what we're talking about today as far as it relates to the bigger urban mobility strategy, which right now, as the commission knows, we have lots of pieces in motion around the region to really implement this region-wide comprehensive congestion management and mobility plan through the urban mobility strategy. Won't go into those components today. We're going to focus in, as you mentioned, Mr. Chair, on the I-205 improvements project that you'll see in the green area there on the south portion of I-205 as it relates to Phase 1A and the Abernathy Bridge. Much more detail to come on what exactly we're here for you to consider today. But I want to then just turn it over really quickly to get to that to our Deputy Director, Della Mosier. Della heads up a lot of the project delivery, among many other things, in the urban mobility portfolio. She does so in a very admirable way, as does Mandy and our entire team. So I want to turn it over to them now to talk a little bit more about kind of the details of where we are, how we got here, and what we're asking for your consideration of today. So Della, why don't you take it away?
Well, thanks, Brendan, and good morning, Mr. Chair, Vice Chair, and Commissioners. For the record, my name is Della Mosier, and I'm the Deputy Director of ODOT's Urban Mobility Office. One of the items on this map I'd just like to point out is before we get into the I-205 improvements project, is the I-205 toll project. So we heard some testimony from Metro Councillor Craddick this morning, and the work that has been done and the partnership that's been developed and forged with the region and understanding over the past several months has been critical to us being able to come to this point. And so the light green area there that shows the 7-mile length of the I-205 construction project is also the 7-mile length of the I-205 toll program. And as Metro Councillor Craddick testified this morning, earlier this week, the council approved the Regional Transportation Plan, or RTP, and Metro Transportation Improvement Plan, or MTIP, amendments that were recommended by Metro's Joint Policy Advisory Committee on Transportation, also known as JPACT. As was mentioned, these approvals came after several months of considerable input received from regional partners, including Metro Council and Metro Advisory Committees. The input and feedback were reinforced by a letter of agreement between ODOT and Metro, stating our shared commitment to partner on delivering a toll program that includes a congestion pricing system that will yield transportation, climate, and equity benefits. The approval for from Metro for the I-205 tolling project allows us to proceed with the National Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA, phase of the project. This phase will include robust, equitable engagement with public and the stakeholders, further analysis of diversion and mitigation, development of low-income toll strategies, preliminary design of tolling gantries, and traffic and revenue studies to understand funding opportunities from toll revenue. Once the NEPA phase concludes on the I-205 toll project, a separate action by this commission to construct gantries and associated toll system infrastructure in order to collect tolls will be needed in the future. These tolls and the ability to bond against toll revenue collected along I-205 will pay for the I-205 improvements project. Next slide, please. So the I-205 improvements project includes 7 miles of improvements on I-205 from Stafford Road to OR 213. And as you can see here, it includes upgrading or replacing 9 bridges to be able to withstand a Cascadia level seismic event, as well as active transportation improvements and an additional through lane in each direction. Next slide, please. So besides enhancing safety by creating a seismically resilient corridor, the project will also reduce crashes. The I-205 tolling project will raise revenue to pay for the 7 miles of improvements, as well as manage congestion by implementing tolls that vary depending on the time of day, with higher rates for peak travel times. The combination of this type of congestion pricing, along with the additional lane, will increase travel time reliability in this section of the I-205 corridor. Next slide. The portion of the I-205 improvements project that is the focus of today's requested action from this commission is the Phase 1A Abernathy Bridge construction project. This project includes seismically upgrading Abernathy Bridge, active transportation improvements, and construction of a new roundabout on OR 43. Next slide. The project was advertised for bid in December 2021 as a best value alternative delivery contract, and it required 2 submittals from each contractor. The first submittal was the technical approach and qualifications, and those were submitted in February and were worth 60% of the score. The second submittal was the cost proposal, which was due in March and was worth 40% of the score. This alternative delivery approach allows us to maximize workforce diversity on this 4-year project, as well as ensure we have a contractor that is qualified to seismically improve the existing structure, all at a competitive price. And so speaking of price, this commission approved ODOT to program $375 million for construction of Phase 1A in July of 21. In March of 22, we received 4 bids, and all of those bids were over $490 million. The apparent best value contractor was Kiewit, who had the highest technical score and a bid of around $512 million. Next slide. The price of $512 million was significantly over the $375 million we had requested to be programmed last summer. The ODOT team performed a bid analysis to understand the reason for the increased costs. And our analysis showed that the material costs for steel and concrete due to supply chain issues and limited suppliers had increased beyond what we had planned for contingency in our programmed costs. The team also noted that more work needed to be done to increase the understanding and reduce the risk related to deep soil mixing around the drilled shaft foundations. So I've shared what ODOT staff found as we reviewed the bids, but today we also have Kent Bowden from Kiewit here today to talk in more detail about the overrun from the contractor's perspective. Kent?
Next slide, please. Thank you. Thank you, Della. Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. For the record, my name is Kent Bowden, and I'm a Vice President and Pursuits Manager with Kiewit, and I thank you for the opportunity to introduce the Kiewit Company. The company as a whole is a large multidiscipline contractor headquartered in Omaha, Nebraska, and we operate across North America, and we've been in business for about 135 years. Kiewit's largest focus at about 1/3 of our work volume is in transportation infrastructure. So the Abernathy Bridge project is right up our alley. We have the largest modern equipment fleet in North America, providing clean diesel emissions required by Oregon House Bill 2007. Even though we're a large contractor, we actually operate like 30 smaller companies. One of those smaller companies just across the river here in Vancouver, Washington, is Kiewit's group of bridge builders that construct the most complicated structures across North America and is Kiewit's Bridge Center of Excellence. In Portland, we've brought you the Tillicum Crossing, the East Side CSO Tunnel, ODOT's Cruise Way project, and the Portland Aerial Tram. Our Bridge and Marine group, of which I've been with for 34 years, is very pleased to become part of the Abernathy Bridge team, and we're committed to meeting and exceeding ODOT's project delivery and diversity goals. Next slide, please. To elaborate a bit more on Della's explanation of the project price, I'd offer you the following details. The cost of structural steel and steel in general has surged between 70 and 100% in the last few months. For the Abernathy Bridge project, that means that the new widening girders, the bearings supporting those steel girders, the pipelines that run across the bridge, be them water or sewer, or also steel pipe, and also reinforcing steel will be encompassed by all the concrete on the project, all susceptible to this surge in the steel pricing. And Della had mentioned the concrete price. The cost of concrete for this project is up about 50%. The complicated construction and massive 24-hour long concrete placements on the project rendered only one supplier that was qualified to be able to support the demands of the project. Our subcontractor prices that we're seeing are up across the board between 25 and 50%, and that applies to both the electrical all the way to the painting and coating subcontractors. The access to the work that you might imagine in the slide there across the river, that will be on temporary steel bridges. Once again, being structural steel bridges, they're also susceptible to these large cost increases. Also, just in general, it's a very complex and high-risk structure. It is what our group is accustomed to building this type of work, but it is very difficult to estimate, especially based on past unit prices. So really part of locking down the price escalations is truly working towards a project notice to proceed here in the middle of May. And then, as was mentioned before, we look forward to being out in the water working on July 1st as the permits allow. And I can assure you that for this project at this point in time, time is truly of the essence. Back over to you, Della.
All right, thank you, Kent. Next slide. So as we talked about, the difference between what ODOT had programmed and what contractors bid for the project was significant. So we requested an opportunity to meet with Kiewit to understand the difference in price and look for opportunities to reduce the cost. As a result, the contractor price was reduced from $512 million to about $447 million. Not all of this difference is net savings, as ODOT elected to defer some of the work. That work includes sign structures so that we can ensure they do not conflict with future toll gantry signage and locations, as well as the opportunity to conduct additional investigations and testing to reduce the risk currently associated with the deep soil mixing. Finally, one of the requirements of the negotiation was to ensure that the DBE goal was preserved. And as you can see here, $62 million of this contract is assigned to DBE contractors. So with that, I'll turn it to Mandy, who can talk more about the opportunities this contract provides for DBE contractors and minority and female construction workers. Mandy?
Thanks, Stella. We can go to the next slide, please. Good morning, Chair Van Brocklen, Vice Chair, and Commissioners. For the record, my name is Mandy Putney, the Urban Mobility Office Strategic Initiatives Director. I'm pleased to be back before you again to provide this update today. In partnership with ODOT's Office of Civil Rights, our Mobility Office, and our partners at Federal Highway Administration, we were able to develop a strong diversity program for the Phase 1A contract, stretching to achieve elements that are not typically included in this sort of procurement. The Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde have set the TARO goal at 5%, and ODOT has set the Disadvantaged Business Enterprise or DBE goal at 14%, which, as you just heard, will result in more than $62 million for DBE firms. ODOT realizes the importance of apprentices as a pathway to economic security and career development. Therefore, ODOT has set the apprenticeship requirements that are seen in similar metro regional projects and has separate targets for minority and female workers, 20% minority and 14% female. With this 4-year project, we have a tremendous opportunity for folks to start as an apprentice and achieve journeyman status by the end of construction. I'm also proud to share that ODOT was approved to participate in FHWA's pilot program to help states, local communities, and the construction industry by providing contracting agencies with the flexibility to use specific and new hiring preferences that were not otherwise authorized by law. We see this initiative that can improve participation in existing training and apprenticeship programs, such as FHWA's on-the-job training, OJT, abbreviated here, as it seeks to further increase workforce development opportunities. This pilot program will improve our potential pool of apprentices by targeting economically distressed zip codes in a 4-county region surrounding the project area, and these zip codes have a high availability of working age individuals. The intent of utilizing this program in combination with our other diversity programs is to address inequities resulting from past barriers in the construction industry, and we will be monitoring and sharing our progress of our work as we progress. I'll now turn it back to Kent Bowden with Kiewit to provide some additional detail about how Kiewit will implement these aspects of our diversity program.
Thank you, Mandy. As was mentioned, we have over $62 million in COVID DBE work committed to be subcontracted on the project. Some of our DBE firms, our partners, are going to be taking on the largest projects ever for their companies, and we've worked for over a year leading up to the bid with our advocacy partners and all the DBE contractors to reach this goal. With thanks to the National Association of Minority Contractors, the Oregon Association of Minority Engineers, the Professional Business Development Group, and Latino Built for their outreach in helping to engage all of these subcontractors. Next slide, please. Regarding workforce development, let me give you an overview of the project's impact on the Oregon labor force. Kiewit is a union contractor with over 50 years of relationships with the various local trade unions in this area. We're currently working with the unions to complete a project labor agreement or community benefits agreement to memorialize the project labor diversity goals. We anticipate over 1.1 million labor hours on the project, and our peak workforce will include approximately 250 craft and 60 staff. The project will embrace an employee equity management plan that'll be similar to Oregon Tradeswomen's Rise Up program. Next slide, please. As you all know, the Abernathy project is within the Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde hiring preference area. And Kiewit is working closely with the tribes to implement the hiring preference and achieve the 5% hiring goal. Project labor goals also include 14% female and 20% minority. and Kiewit's trade union partners are on board with reaching these goals. We're excited to bring on the next generation of craft labor with the 20% apprentice goal. We all know we desperately need a pipeline for our future craft workers, and we work closely with the Portland Opportunities Industrial Center, or POIC, Constructing Hope, and Portland Youth Builders, all to source apprentices and support them in working towards their 4,000 hours towards journeyman status. Kiewit is also a Bureau of Labor and Industry certified trainer, along with our trade union partners. Next slide, please. And as was mentioned, ODOT was successful in receiving FHWA approval to implement zip code priority hiring for the project. And Kiewit is experienced and has past successes in other states implementing the zip code programs with our union partners. And we really look forward to bringing those benefits to Oregon. Back over to you, Della.
Thank you, Kent. Next slide. So, Mr. Chair and Commissioners, should this commission today approve the request in front of you to program the $120 million in additional funding for construction of I-205 Phase 1A, our next steps would be to then seek Metropolitan Planning Organization approval to align the Metro Transportation Improvement Program List, the MTIP, with the statewide Transportation Improvement Program List, which is the STIP. We would also then seek federal highways approval for contract award and notice to proceed. These approvals are anticipated to be completed around mid-May, and as Kent shared, time is of the essence to allow us to stay on schedule for the July in-water work window this summer, which would kick off the 4-year construction program. Next slide. So this slide provides the official requested action for today to add $120 million in additional funding for construction of I-205 Phase 1A to include the Abernathy Bridge seismic retrofit. And with that, we stand ready for questions, comments, and feedback. And we'll turn it back to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Della. Again, I want to thank everyone who has spoken this morning. We are really pleased to have Kent here. So thank you for joining us. And I do want to make sure to note Commissioner Strickler's personal involvement in this for many months and working toward today's meeting and action. And certainly Brendan and Travis and Andy and Della have been very key actors for us in this and will continue to be for many years to come on this project. So with that, I'd like to open it for questions and comments by commissioners. Are there questions? I'm not seeing hands, but that doesn't mean they're. Wait, Commissioner Burke.
Yes, good morning.
Good morning.
I have several questions.
Great.
One, and I'll get them all out, and then whoever is the right person to answer them can chime in if that's okay.
That's perfect.
One is a question about the concrete, and I think Kent said that there's only one eligible supplier of what we need for the project. So I just wonder about the risk associated with having one eligible supplier and what happens if something should go awry. The second question is about, let me start out by saying thank you to the staff for having brought this to us at this point in cooperation with our regional partners. This morning it just sounded like great and smooth sailing, and it wasn't hard at all. And I know that that was not in fact the case, that it took a lot of hard work to get us to this point. So let me start over and say thank you for that work. So one about the concrete. Two, the other big thing that the staff did is working to bring this bid down to below the initial shocking numbers that we received. And my question about that is, how much of the bid reduction is associated with the deferred work? And then my third and final question, this for now, is about the bid, the goals for the DBEs and working with the labor unions, and this may be back again to Kent, about what happens when you see that it looks like you're falling short of these goals.
Great, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Burke, is it okay if I orchestrate these responses?
Yeah, that seems like a good approach. So thank you for the questions and for the comments about the work we've done. You're certainly right, Commissioner Burke, that there has been a lot of effort in the last many months and certainly all of this year. So I appreciate your underscoring that, and we're all aware of that, but it's definitely important to recognize it. So with that, yeah, Della, why don't you orchestrate the responses?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Burke, and Kent. I'll take the negotiation topic, and hoping you can talk a little bit more about concrete suppliers and DBE goals, and then Mandy maybe jump in with anything else on DBE that would be helpful, if that works. So on the negotiations, I think it ends up being around a reduction of around $65 million. We won't know what the true net savings are until we bid the deferred work, but our estimate right now would indicate around 50% in net savings from that number. So Kent, you want to talk about the concrete and the DBE goals? Go ahead.
Sure. Commissioner Burke, your question regarding concrete. Fortunately, our supplier does have multiple plants in the general area here. So in the event that one plant's unable or has some sort of mechanical breakdown, we will have a contingency plan to go to their alternative plant. And also the restrictions that really reduced it down to one capable supplier are on the 24-hour placements on the project. And there's a limited amount of those 24-hour placements as well. So the risk type of placements are fairly limited on the job, fortunately. And then there would be other suppliers if we ran into issues with other types of placements where there could be a backup to help us there. And your second question addressed to me on the DBE goals. With a robust monitoring plan of the goals, we are able to change trajectory in the event that we see a goal that's in jeopardy or is in risk of not being met. So there is a very good countdown process, I'll call it, where with that robust monitoring, we can change trajectory to assure that we make the goals. And we're accustomed to providing that level of robust tracking so that we do make sure that we do meet all those goals and we have a very good record at meeting and exceeding the goals.
I'll just add, Commissioner Burke and Chair Van Brocklin, if I may. This is Mandy Putney again for the record. That reporting and monitoring management plan is required from Hewitt early on after they receive NTP for the contract, and that's something that we'll be working closely with them on in terms of the monitoring and the early identification of any challenges should they arise. But there's a robust level of experience that we do have with Hewitt, and we're really happy about that.
Thank you all for thank Commissioner Burke for raising those points and for all of you who responded. Are there other questions? Commissioner Smith and then Vice Chair Simpson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So one of my concerns, questions that I'd like to kind of make sure we have on the record is financial. And obviously, we're all aware of the huge cost increases in materials and labor. And obviously that puts a lot of pressure on our budget and ODOT delivery. And my concern is related to the risk in going forward in this climate and what that impact might have on the overall budget for the agency, and in particular, the overall plan for delivering the regional pricing mobility project and the Rose Quarter. So maybe, and I think probably Travis is the right person to answer the question in terms of risk. If we don't go forward, what are the impacts, and risk going forward? Are we still able to deliver on the Rose Quarter, which is another huge freight bottleneck, top 10 in the country, as well as safety? And so how does this fit in the overall scheme, the overall plan to deliver regional projects?
Certainly, Chair Van Brocklin, Commissioner Smith, members of the commission. For the record, I'm Travis Brower, ODOT's Assistant Director for Revenue, Finance, and Compliance. So you asked a number of questions there. I'll try to address them all, but please, if I miss anything of that, please remind me and I'll respond. So first, you mentioned whether there's any risk to the overall agency finances. And I would characterize the risk to the agency's overall finances as extremely low. In the sense that within this plan, we have a phased approach across the urban mobility strategy that will let us move forward with various components as revenue comes available. So we have both bonding from HB 2017 that is available to complete the strategy, as well as toll revenue from the I-205 project and the regional mobility pricing program that we are estimating. And so we believe that across those three funding sources, that we will be able to move forward with the totality of the projects in the program and essentially isolate the financial risk within those dedicated funding sources, so that if we are able to secure those sources, we will be able to deliver the projects. If not, then the projects simply won't move forward. I think that there is a backup plan, for example, on the I-205 project. If for some reason tolling revenues do not come online as projected, we simply stay with the I-205 Phase 1A project and don't move forward on the remainder of the project until we are able to secure toll revenues. So in that sense, I believe that there is an opportunity to move forward here. We have looked at alternatives to moving forward on I-205, perhaps waiting a year, perhaps reducing the scope of the project. The challenge is that in this current bidding and interest rate environment where the economy is very dynamic, if we were to wait on this project and say rebid it in a year, it's quite likely that interest rates would have risen over that time period in a way that would significantly reduce the proceeds of any bonds we were to issue under HB 3055 and HB 2017, and therefore cancel out any cost savings we might be able to achieve by waiting. And so it appears that, from all our analysis, the moment is now to move forward on this project. If there was anything I missed in that series of questions, please let me know.
Just follow up, just making sure that this doesn't put the rest of the I-5 and Rose Quarter at risk, because I think that's still a pretty critical link for freight movement across the state, safety, linking it up with the future river crossing, which is critically needed for seismic security in the event of Cascadia. So just wanting to make sure that we can still move forward with all those other critical projects.
Thank you for the reminder of that specific point. So I would state that right now, the I-205 project, as it moves forward, we'll be using a variety of funding sources that could involve some temporary use of the HB 2017, HB 3055 bond revenue that's available to the Rose Quarter, with the intention that when the regional mobility pricing program comes online, we would hopefully be able to pay that money back and make the Rose Quarter whole. So there would be potentially some transfer of resources, ideally temporary. However, based on our analysis, we believe that we will be able to move forward with the early work packages on the Rose Quarter, given the resources that are available, net of the resources that are needed for I-205. You will recall, of course, that the Rose Quarter currently has a significant funding gap. So we already have some financial challenges with that project that mean that it will require bringing the regional mobility pricing program online before we're able to move forward with the Rose Quarter. That does not change under this scenario. The Rose Quarter would still need the regional mobility pricing program or some other funding source to come online in order to make that financing gap closed under this scenario of moving forward with I-205 first. So in that sense, while there's potential for temporary shift of funding away from the Rose Quarter, it does not fundamentally alter the fact that the Rose Quarter has a funding gap that needs to be addressed through the RMPP or some other funding source.
Thanks. Mr. Chair, one just kind of follow-up question. It seems that now is also a good time to move forward because there may be some availability for grants through the IIJA infrastructure bill, that if we don't have a project proceeding, then we wouldn't necessarily be able to apply for some of those grants. So now would be it'd be a missed opportunity if we waited. Would that be a fair assessment?
Commissioner Smith, yes, I agree that there are a myriad of grant opportunities available for projects in the urban mobility strategy, and we are currently lining out those opportunities. For example, the I-205 project, we believe, could be a very good candidate for the infra grant program that was funded, I believe, at $8 billion over 5 years in the IIJA. We're currently determining when the most appropriate time to go forward with a grant application, given the requirements, for project readiness. But do believe that this could be a very effective application in that program that could then make sure that we can complete the project and not have to address scope. And we certainly can't say that it would reduce toll rates. It certainly could ensure that we don't have upward pressure to raise toll rates to provide additional revenue for the project.
Thank you. And this is a follow-up, but it's not really a question, just more of a kind of statement, if it's okay for me to do that, Mr. Chair.
Sure, that would be fine.
Great, thanks. I just wanted to kind of respond to the public comment we had today. I asked a lot of financial questions, which is a big piece of our decision, but I also want to acknowledge that it is critical that we move forward with tolling in a way that is keeping equity centered. And I say that because I'm the liaison to the Equity and Mobility Advisory Committee, and I've been working with that group for a year. And it's critical that we do this in a way. This is the first time we're doing tolling, and we need to do it in Oregon in a way that is centering equity and making sure that we are mitigating impacts for diversion. And I think listening to those voices, which the EMAC group has really been engaged and helpful. And so going forward, as we go forward with tolling, that needs to be a critical part. And also a critical component is the regional mobility pricing program overall in the region. We're not just paying for infrastructure, but we're going to be focusing on reducing demand and making sure that we are spending money from these tolls to help alternative transportation, not just infrastructure. So just in the overall picture, infrastructure is important, but so are these other very critical components as we develop tolling. So that's just my perspective, and I wanted to respond to the comments that we've heard today. So thank you.
Yeah, and I would just want to follow up on that last point to say that that's all of our perspective. Everyone on the commission at every juncture since House Bill 2017 has passed, has been focused on, and certainly the director and the senior leadership has been focused on a range of things. And as you mentioned, Sharon, and I appreciate your membership on the EMAC and Vice Chair Simpson's membership prior to you, that we have tried to establish and are continuing to identify ways to work on the broad range of things we're trying to accomplish with this regional strategy, which span from economic to environmental to equity to a range of other things, multi-mobility, demand management, just a long list of things that we need to be thinking about constantly and striving towards an innovative and modern system. So I appreciate those comments, and I think they reflect the views of the commission broadly. Before I move to Vice Chair Simpson's questions, I wanted to just give Chris, this is the day, I guess, Chris, where we're giving you opportunities, because Chris is our one direct report and the one person that we are responsible for hiring and evaluating. Just any thoughts you would like to share on financial management, financial risk, and so that whole line of financial considerations that are obviously a major issue or a major consideration in what we're looking at today. And so that finance, financial management, risk management, and also this effort that we're engaged in to try to develop something unique and different, not just because it's the first time we've done it in Oregon, but because we want to do it in a way that is trying to balance a broad range of values that Councillor Craddick was referring to, for example, earlier. So this is not trying to put you on the spot moment. This is really just trying to hear from the director of the department on your overall, from your leadership perch, your perspective on all these things, because this is something that we will need to be focusing on for years and years and years to come. And this set of projects is a huge opportunity for us to be a model for the nation that we aspire to be. So I would like to give you an opportunity to comment from the director's position leading the agency in this time.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, members of the commission, thank you for that opportunity. There's probably a couple of things that I would share, starting first with the, all things worth doing tend to be a little difficult, right? And we're doing something that's very different from what we've historically done as an agency. So you'll all note that Oregon was the first state to pass a gas tax, a state gas tax. And we're the first state to enter into talking about a RUC program. And we're now the first state talking about a true congestion management regional mobility and pricing program that is centered in equity. All of these things are firsts, and they're firsts because they're the right thing to do, not because we really enjoy being first. These things are difficult, and getting them right takes the level of dialogue, conversation, and I'll submit some trust and risk in moving forward. I think the commission has set a charge and a tone for the things that are important for us to accomplish, recognizing that they're going to take some compromise and some nudging forward in order to get them there. So overall, from a direction standpoint, overall, from trying to accomplish what we've committed to and what was committed to for us through legislative process, this is a good path forward. Now, I will say it's probably a little more aggressive than ODOT has historically been in the past. I think we knew that getting into it, and we knew the urban mobility strategy was really trying to accomplish a lot of things at the same time. But what you see in that is that waiting for us to finish one thing at a time projects out and protracts our ability to get things done over decades, as opposed to what we've seen is a level of disinvestment for the last several decades. We've got important needs, and those important needs are now, and we have to capitalize on when potential funding opportunities are available. Make no mistake, we put a lot of pressure on the Urban Mobility Office. We put a lot of pressure on the coordination with them to the Region 1 team. And then we put a lot of pressure on Mr. Brower and his team, and really a whole big part of the agency. So not just those that I mentioned, but many other folks as well, to come up with a finance plan that not only works, but manages the risk and does so in a way that still allows us to get things done, but has a little bit of a more aggressive posture than maybe what we've had in the past. Commissioner Smith, I think you captured it very well. One of the things that we often do in our industry is sometimes we describe risk as one-sided. We describe the risk of moving forward with something and the financial risk associated with that. What is the opportunity cost associated, those kinds of things. I'll submit that there's a risk in not moving forward on some of these things too, and those risks are greater than the financial aspects that are coming. And what we're asking our teams to do is balance all sides of the risk profile and come up with a recommendation. I think that's what they've done. Commissioner Burke, you earlier asked a question about when we look at cost savings with this program in particular, is that just a deferred scope issue, or was there real cost savings? And what I'd submit is there's really three main places that you can find cost savings in a program like this or in a project like this. Some is in profits associated with the contracting community, but I'll tell you those are fairly slim in the community. Mr. Bowden would probably tell you that himself, and I don't want to put him on the spot. So the other two areas are risk and scope. And if you can combine the risk and scope and say deferring some elements of scope helps us better manage the risk that's been priced into the initial estimate, that might allow us an opportunity later. And I think Della covered that earlier. We've got one area of this program where we had a high level of risk and it was priced accordingly. So working with the contract team, which I'm appreciative of the partnership there, working with the contract team, we developed a strategy that we hope does two things. It defers the thing that may cost us more in risk than we need to pay right now, and it may provide us an opportunity to save because we can better manage that risk before we price it again. And so that's really where we sit. It's not just a mere scope reduction to get us there, even though it is scope that really triggers that conversation. So, Mr. Chair, again, I appreciate the opportunity and appreciate the Commission's trust in our team. Our team is working really hard to deliver on the things that we have, one, assigned as a priority coming through Commission conversation, but two, been working on ever since House Bill 2017 and the establishment of the Urban Mobility Office. The last thing that I would say is this: I am really proud of the efforts that this team has put together to create our contracting plan that brings in diverse contractors, local contractors, and bring in a partner with Kiewit to really help us deliver in a way that we have never delivered before. We now have two projects that are in motion that are delivering in a contractual way that's very different from the way we have before, and that's both Rose Quarter and this project, should you choose to approve it going forward. Those are big gains for the agency, and we're demonstrating that it can be done, and I'm looking forward to what that means for the future as we go forward with our minority contracting efforts.
Thank you for your comments, and I appreciate the Commissioner's questions to date. And with that, to this point, and with that, I'll turn to the Vice Chair.
Thank you, sir. I don't really have a lot to say. I don't know if Commissioner Brown had anything to say, or did I miss that?
Commissioner Brown, would you like to say something first before the Vice Chair?
So he can follow up on my comments now.
I think that the other commissioners were spot on some of their questions and also their points. And I think that the thing I struggle with the most is we've been asked to do a lot, ODOT and the commission, and make decisions with and take huge risks, I think. But to sit back and do nothing just costs our department more and more. We can't continue just holding off and trying to figure out what we're going to do. I think sometimes you have to take that risk and move forward. I think on this project, we need to do it. Timing is right. I do worry about the Rose Quarter and how we are going to be able to afford to move forward in that project. As Commissioner Smith said, she's worried about jeopardizing it. I think that project was jeopardized a long time ago with looking at all the add-ons that we've looked at for that project. And I don't know if we'll be able to find the funding completely for that project. And I honestly don't know that project will get off the ground. That's my own opinion, but it worries me. With that said, I think this is the right move, and we need to move forward. We cannot wait any longer. And we've been given our marching orders to do something. And I think that the staff and the contractor have worked extremely hard to get us where we need to go. And including, Metro and the council and the commissioners that have made commitment on their ends too. So I think that the timing is right and we need to move forward. That's into my comments.
Thank you, Commissioner Brown. Vice Chair.
Great. Thank you, sir. Thanks, Julie, for jumping in. I guess really, it's just a lot of support and applause to the group. Not only just getting it to this point, but I would say our harsh negotiator, Della, being able to get us to a place where not only we can get something that's realistic on the table, but more importantly, that's saving tax dollars for the Oregonians. And so I think that's really important to highlight in this, given where the original estimates came in at. And furthermore, I know, Della, this is probably, it's no discredit to Megan. I know Mandy sits over there and probably pokes at her with it, but this is obviously a little bit more convenient, a little bit more collaborative, a little bit more positive outlook on this project versus what's happened with Rose Quarter, unfortunately. And obviously that's TBD as to how that's going to play out per Commissioner Brown and Commissioner Smith's sentiments around financing of that project. But I'd be remiss if I didn't highlight the work that's being done by all stakeholders and folks within the agency, more importantly, working with other agencies and other external groups in terms of getting us to this point. So Brendan and Director Strickler, I would be remiss if I didn't, give you guys a high five as well in this process. But I would like to pivot over to Mr. Bowden and just let him know that I'm gonna keep my eyes very closely tight to this. I know that your 14% goal it sounds good. And I don't know, I feel like maybe you guys may have had higher percentage of that on the Willamette River crossing, which was the non-vehicle bridge that was developing as $1 billion bridge for the light rail for the Orange Line. But I would say 14% should definitely not be our ceiling on this. Given the fact that there is stagnation in other infrastructure projects around the region. And this is a great opportunity for us to just have it as the floor and not the ceiling at that 14%. So of DBE outreach and opportunities. So I'm excited to see how that plays itself out. And I will definitely continue to monitor that pretty closely. But all that aside, good work, you guys, and I'm looking forward to next steps.
Thank you, Vice Chair Simpson. So I guess I will just say a couple of things. One is I think that since reading House Bill 2017, when I first came on the commission and realizing we had $30 million, then initially dedicated exclusively to Rose Quarter after House Bill 3055 last year, that money became more flexible in terms of our regional program. But tolling has always been the primary financing tool. And our ability to succeed with tolling in all of the ways we've discussed, it being equitable, it being having a demand management effect, it also being implemented is the fulcrum for really being able to do this program. And so we have to get that right, but we also have to get that done. And the two are not mutually exclusive. So when we talk about financial risk and the questions around financial management, that is the key piece. And that will be, I think, end up being the primary answer to how we build Rose Quarter, et cetera, is to put in place something that we can then leverage other funding that may be available. So I appreciate all the discussion on that. Ultimately, we're trying to do a number of things at once. We have a broad set of responsibilities under the bill, House Bill 2017, and in the metro region, we have a lot of plate spinning. These projects, financial tools, equity, climate, and we've got to proceed with all and many others that I have. Multi-mobility, I mean, I could go on and list 24 things that we have to focus on. We really have to do this in a way where we're again building out something that is trying to be impactful in all of those ways. So the discussion we've been having recently about electrification, which is that is a big piece. We have to do that piece. We have to do the diversity piece right. We have to do the MBE piece right. We have so many elements of this for it to succeed. So it's very ambitious. And done well, it will be a model for other states, other regions, metropolitan areas. So there's a lot of work ahead and a lot of things to think through. And I guess I would just leave all of that with one thought, which is we need to continue to be flexible. We need to continue to recognize as we're moving forward with these things, if something isn't working, we're seeing it's not going in the right direction, to be able to adjust. And because we're doing something very different than we've done in the past. And it requires a lot from the agency and flexing to something that is going to be different from kind of the standard projects we've done in the past. I think the importance of today is we're trying to move that agenda forward in a thoughtful way. And so I plan to support the motion when made. So are there further comments from members of the commission? Further questions? I'm sure there will be going forward. So one thing I would like to suggest is that we have on the I-205 project, that we have updates at the regular commission meetings at least every 6 months. And more regularly, more often as needed. So 6 months is the floor. So that the only way we're going to be able to be effective partners with the agency is if we're continually informed, or else we'll fall back and we'll lose track of the thread. So I really encourage the Urban Mobility Office to, as you have to date, continue to build in regular updates. And if we need several updates within a 6-month period, because there's a lot going on, then that's what we should have. Maybe make for our regular meetings being a little longer, but I think it's very important for us to be continually informed. Part of that is we're out in communities around the state, and as these things begin to get higher visibility, we'll be asked questions, and we don't want to be we don't want to be giving an answer that's outdated or doesn't take into account something that has happened we need to know about. So I would encourage that. So if there are no other questions or comments, I would look for a motion. And maybe we could put the slide up that that gives us the requested action. So whoever makes the motion can have it be consistent with what we're being asked to vote on. Sabrina, can you put that back up on screen? I think it was slide 17. So is there a motion to this effect?
Chair, I'll move to approve amending the 21-24 STIP to increase construction funding for the I-205 and I-5 to Oregon 213 Phase 1A, 205 improvements of the Abernathy Bridge widening project from $375,350,000 to $495,350,000 for a total increase of $120 million.
Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Burke seconds. Vice Chair Simpson's motion. Is there discussion? If not, and I hear none, I will move to a roll call vote. Vice Chair Simpson.
Aye.
Commissioner Burke.
Aye.
Commissioner Smith.
Aye.
Commissioner Brown.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Is there any other business before the commission? I guess I would turn to Brendan or Della. Is there anything else you need from us today? Okay.
That concludes what we needed for this special meeting, but I will say, Mr. Chair, we will be back. We have our standing meetings. Appreciate the support. We covered a lot of territory today, and the leadership of the commission will appreciate that, and we'll provide that proper cadence to make sure the commission is thoroughly informed and involved in as we move forward on this piece and all the other pieces in the urban mobility strategy. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, thanks everyone for making the time for this special meeting. And with that, we are adjourned.